This new iPhone 15 feature will make you furious. Apple reveals their plans for their future products. And do Android users secretly want iPhones? What's up? I'm Royce, and this is Apple Next, where I talk about all the latest and hottest Apple news of the week. So if that sounds good to you, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and let's get into it. First up, let's talk about how Apple is going to cause a stir with this new iPhone 15 feature. And the feature I'm referring to is Apple finally bringing USB-C over to the iPhone. And hearing that, yes, that should be good news, but if you're an iPhone user, this will definitely shake things up, especially if you're someone who doesn't keep up with Apple news or watch these types of videos, and you're not expecting this change coming at all. And that's because this isn't the first time Apple has changed up the charging port. And if you don't remember, before there was the lightning cable, there was the 30-pin connector. And this was our charging cable for all the OG iPhones before they switched over to the lightning. And this is also how we charged other Apple products like the OG iPads and our iPods. Yes, that's how far back this goes. And just to make my point, here is a 60 gig iPod. Yes, 60 gigs, killing it back in the day. Bam, plug it in. All good. And this guy right here, you've probably seen in the back of my videos. This is the very first iPad and another Apple product that you plugged in with the 30-pin connector. And the last phone to use the 30-pin connector was this guy right here, the iPhone 4S. And then after that, that's when Apple decided to shake the whole world by introducing the iPhone 5. And with the iPhone 5, came the lightning connector. And the lightning cable on its own was actually really cool because first thing, it was reversible like this. It didn't matter how you plugged it in, where you go back to the 30-pin connector, and even at the time, all the other devices that were using micro USB, you had to plug it in a very specific way. And if you didn't, it would just be annoying and get really frustrating. But at least with the 30-pin connector, there was this little logo here in the front that indicated that this was the way to plug it in properly. But the lightning port did away with all that. And with the lightning cable came Apple's made for iPhone protocol, which allowed them to detect pretty much certified lightning cables that you knew were gonna work properly with their phone versus bootleg cables that could potentially harm your device. And yes, even though going from a 30-pin connector to the lightning cable was a great step up, where it made a lot of iPhone users furious was the realization that getting the new iPhone 5 meant all the bajillion 30-pin connector cables that everyone already had in their home was now pointless. And as Apple updated their other lines like the iPads, the only option was to then go out and then buy a whole bunch of new lightning cables. And honestly, I feel like it took a couple years for people to really get over this. Now, what lessened the blow a little bit was that at least back then, Apple still included charging cables with their phones. So you at least knew you were getting one lightning cable if you upgraded your new phone. But if you went over to somebody's house and they didn't upgrade yet and you forgot your cable, you were out of luck. Where at least if you were using an Android device, somebody at least had a micro USB cable lying around somewhere. So now bringing it back to Apple, including USB-C in the iPhone, I think it will stir up similar feelings just because us iPhone users were still a little scarred. But I think the time it takes to recover from this switch will be completely different. First thing is that USB-C has already been around for a long time, and it's already pretty much the standard way to charge a whole bunch of other devices, right? Like, we aren't switching to a whole new cable that's just for the Apple ecosystem. USB-C is available everywhere. And chances are you already have a USB-C cable at home right now. And that also means you won't have to go through Apple to get a legit USB-C cable. You can go anywhere and find one. Plus, Apple has already made the USB-C jump with their iPads and their laptops, so people are already in the right headspace when it comes to this. So yes, I do think some people will be a little bit frustrated by this, but I think this will blow over way faster than switching from the old school 30-pin connector to the lightning port. And with this upgrade now, every piece of technology, no matter what the brand is or the company, everybody will just be using the exact same cable for everything, and that's the way it should be. Next up, Apple has revealed their schedule for their Worldwide Developer Conference happening in June. And now this is exciting because Apple's Worldwide Developer Conference, or WWDC as they call it if you're cool. But what this event is for, unlike their keynote that they have in September when they announce the new iPhones and everything like that, this is to specifically deal with their new software that's going to be coming up alongside those new iPhones. So iOS 17, iPadOS 17, macOS, watchOS, all their devices. And they spend most of their time showing off the new features and what we can expect coming forward, but they also use their time to throw in some new product launches as well, sometimes some new laptops, and that's where I think they'll use some time to introduce the new 15-inch MacBook Air that we think is coming, and potentially this Apple VR virtual reality headset, whatever it's going to be called. We can also expect them to talk about their new M3 chip, which is the follow-up to their M2 chip that they announced last year. And we really haven't heard anything about this new M3 chip, other than that it's looking like it might be delayed until 2024. So we might not even see any new Apple products that takes advantage of that new M3 chip for a little bit. But the event itself, WWDC, will kick off on June 5th at 10 a.m. And that'll be followed with a whole bunch of other events, meetups, things like that look really fun and I wish I could go to. But Apple also notes that the day is going to end with a special activity that, quote, you won't want to miss. And this is interesting because usually the keynote is the event you don't want to miss. So them throwing in this other like side activity later means they got something really special up their sleeves. And what makes the most sense to me is it's probably gonna have to do with something with Apple's virtual reality headset, since that's something completely new. So they may announce it during the keynote and then have like a special hands-on experience later in the day. Or maybe they don't even say anything about it during the keynote and they use this special time to do that. And that would make sense too, because if this headset is supposed to pack in all the features that have been rumored so far, like pretty much having like this super powerful chip, it's pretty much a computer. It'll be able to play iOS and like iPad games and apps, things like that. It's definitely going to need its own like special hands-on experience to be able to kind of get a hand or a grasp on what it can offer. Either way, I'm super excited because this is shaping up to be a jam-packed WWDC. The fact that Apple has already leaked certain things like Final Cut Pro and Logic Pro coming to the iPad next week, at least as the time of this recording, and even them revealing some really cool accessibility features that we can expect in iOS 17. Apple's never really done that before, where they like pre-announce things that they would save for the keynote. So that just means that there's gonna be a lot to cover, and I can't wait to see it. But yeah, let me know what you guys are most excited for or hoping to see at this year's WWDC, and drop a comment below. And next up, speaking of features that Apple has already dropped ahead of WWDC, this is one for all the music lovers out there. Apple has released this new feature you could take advantage of today as long as your phone is up to the date to the latest software, called Apple Music Concert Discovery. And this feature spreads across both the Apple Music app and the Maps app. And in the Music app, Apple has created a new category called Set List, where you can listen to the whole set list of upcoming tours of popular artists like Sam Smith or Beyonce. And they take it a step further by providing a link to where you can purchase the tickets to these concerts right in the Music app. And then in the Maps app, Apple included 40 new guides that spotlight some of the best live music venues across the world. So for example, just looking at some of the guides in LA, they have a guide called Discover LA's Most Essential Music Venues. And in that guide, you can scroll and see a lot of popular music venues in LA. And if you click on Find Out More, you can see all the upcoming concerts that those venues are hosting. And if you see a concert that you like, you can tap on it and you'll see a link that says get tickets, and it'll send out so you can buy those tickets. So yeah, a really cool feature that I think music lovers will enjoy. Next up are Android users jumping ship to iPhone? And in short, the answer is kind of, because according to this Consumer Intelligence Research Partners research document thing, it says 15% of all iPhone purchases over the last year has come from Android users making the switch. And that's higher than it's been in the past 5 years. They even point out that Android users accounted for 21% of new iPhone purchases back in 2016. Yeah, so definitely some interesting numbers, not something crazy where just like a mass exodus is happening, but a decent amount where it does, you know, cause the question of like, okay, well, why is this happening? Why is that percentage switching over to iPhone? And for me personally, I think it really comes down to just a couple reasons. And one, unfortunately, I think the most common reason just being that if you're someone who has an Android phone and all your friends and family have iPhones and they're all yelling at you because you're messing up the group chat, chances are you probably just switched over to iPhone so people would shut up. And yes, that does suck. And Google has even thrown shade at Apple, saying that at least in this point in time, it's kind of in Apple's court to figure out how to make that a better experience across the board. Another one could be someone who's just trying something different. They've had Android phones their whole life. They kind of want to see what iPhones are about. Or maybe they've already had an iPad or a Mac and they just kind of want to complete that ecosystem. I know a lot of jokes are made about Apple's walled garden, but if you are within those walls, it is pretty magical how well all these devices work together. And that kind of goes into my last point. People might switch over just for the simplicity of using the iPhone. You don't really need to know how to use a lot of different features. You open up the phone, all the apps are right there. I know the home screen gets a lot of flack for it just being so basic and it hasn't been changed since the very first iPhone, but there is kind of just like a nice simplified feeling of you open your phone, your app's right there, you tap on it, you do what you need to do. And my last point, which I think is one that flies under the radar a lot and Apple doesn't get enough credit for, is how far back they support their older devices. So for example, the current version of iOS that's on phones today is iOS 16, and that's supported as far back as the iPhone 8. So that means if you're someone who has an iPhone 8, you're pretty much for the most part on par with people who have an iPhone 14. And that really says a lot. And if you don't really care about having the, greatest specs, the best camera, things like that, that's a really great offering. The fact that you could low-key just like go on Amazon and get an iPhone 8 and be good to go. But I wouldn't recommend doing that because with iOS 17 on the horizon, the iPhone 8 will probably get phased out. And since there wasn't a iPhone 9, it went from the 8 to the 10. The 10 will probably be the new oldest device to support iOS 17, which is still really good. And you never know, Apple could shock us and still keep the iPhone 8 in the mix. I mean, I feel like they kept the iPhone 6 around for a pretty long time. So yeah, those are my reasons for why this could be happening, but let me know what you guys think in the comments. Lastly, let's talk about this new product that I believe Apple's going to announce at WWDC. And that new product is the 15-inch MacBook Air. And I've talked about this in a previous video, but I wanted to bring it back and really talk about why I think it's so important for Apple to introduce this 15-inch MacBook Air. Because right now, if you're someone who wants an Apple laptop, but you want a screen bigger than the 13-inch MacBook Air or the 13-inch MacBook Pro, the only option is to jump up to the 14-inch or 16-inch MacBook Pro. And that is a lot of money, especially if you're not gonna take advantage of those Pro features. Really, the only option is to settle for the 13-inch MacBook Air or MacBook Pro, or just go out and get a PC with a bigger screen. So Apple is really missing out on this little gray area. And they obviously know it because reports about this 15-inch MacBook Air has been swirling through the internet for the past couple months. And I do think it'll be received really well, especially if they can keep it around $1,200. You really don't want to price it more than the 13-inch MacBook Pro, which you can get the base model for $1,300. So yeah, it would be weird if both of those kind of came in at $1,300. So that's why I think a $1,200 price point for this 15-inch MacBook Air would be perfect. Or if they do want to bring it in around $1,300, then I personally think they just need to phase out that 13-inch MacBook Pro, because honestly, it's kind of pointless. I hate to say it. Because even though it has the Pro name in it, I don't really think it's Pro enough for what people want. And one of the big gripes about it is the fact that it can't output to 2 external monitors at the same time. It can only do one, unlike the 14-inch and the 16-inch models that can export, like you see in my background, 2 external monitors. Yeah, that may not seem like a big deal, but if you're someone buying a MacBook Pro, you expect it to have certain Pro features, and that is definitely one. And it seems that this 15-inch MacBook Air will be utilizing the same chip that's in this 13-inch MacBook Pro. So yes, it will have that same issue that it will only output to 1 external monitor, but with the MacBook Air, you don't really expect or care whether you have those 2 monitors, right? Because the audience who's gonna go for that laptop is completely different. They won't expect it to have the highest specs and all the Pro features. They mainly just wanna get it because they just wanna be productive, maybe take advantage of some Pro apps, but more in a less extreme manner. But really, it's just gonna be for people who want a MacBook Air and just wish that had a bigger screen. So yeah, with this, I think this is a perfect opportunity for Apple to just phase out that 13-inch MacBook Pro completely, and then just have the MacBook Air 15-inch, and then the 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pro. That's the laptop lineup, done. But yeah, I'm really excited to see the direction Apple takes with this, and who knows, they could just do a shadow drop tomorrow or next week, sometime before the keynote, and it could just be this press release, right? That's how crazy it's been. But either way, I'm excited. Let me know what you guys think. And that's all the Apple news I have for the day. I'll catch y'all in the next one.